Hi, folks. You're Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about an example. This is a personal or example, so I can give you the first-hand information on this. This is a guy who's I don't know, early to mid 30s, I suppose, and he's come from the Eastern Bloc. And just as the Eastern Bloc was falling to pieces, so he came to Australia. I think directly from there, and he was hired into the company that I was working for. Now, due to, as this is often the case, I wouldn't have come across him if there hadn't been a few shuffles. Someone's off sick and someone's this, and other guy can't do that. So the CEO says, "Hey, Billy Bob, you can look." And I was like a junior VP in operations or something at the time. So, hey, Billy Bob, you're going to look after what was in this organization hardware tech support. So there was like a software guy who would typically have taken this looks after this, but he couldn't do it. So I doubled up. So kind of was wearing two hats at the time. So I'm fine. That's the company paid well. I mean, I don't care. So anyway, that's how I came across this guy. Now, I wouldn't have come across him in the normal run of things because I wouldn't have hired someone like him. But anyway, he's there, and if the guy directly in charge of that department who is away wants to get rid of him or hire more, and that's his lookout and his business. So I won't get involved. So this technical worker, he's like the senior guy in that sort of section, and I'm his boss's boss. I guess that's the best way to give you the architecture of this. Now he's I sort of noticed him around, but we'd never spoken, so I didn't know who he was really. But he would sort of hang outside the office door at even 1 minute to 9 or a few minutes to 9 o'clock. And then as the clock was striking 9, he would walk in the door. Now, he could have come in earlier and had a coffee. The staff amenities, the employee amenities were very good, excellent coffee, freshly ground beans every day, and this sort of stuff, good quality coffee, and lots of things like chocolate cookies and goodness knows what there. But I got the impression while I was there that the company was spending more money on chocolate cookies than anything else. But boy, did they go through those quickly. But anyway, he's and at 5 o'clock, as the clock was striking 5, he'd be not casually walking, but close to sprinting out the door. I thought that was a bit odd, but okay. And he would work. I found he would work slowly, quite methodically, so that I couldn't fault the quality of the work he did. But say, just using round numbers to illustrate the point, if the average worker there was sort of fixing 100 boxes a day, for example, this guy would do 70. Now the work was again satisfactory quality, no complaints there. He was arriving on time and leaving on time, so that was it. Now there are a few things that he just point blank refused to do, and would use various sort of I thought underhanded, if not deceitful, tactics to avoid responsibility. He had this idea or had this concept that responsibility was not his. He was a worker, and the managers had all the responsibility. He had none. By the same token, he wouldn't accept that he would be told what to do. So he would decide what he was going to do. So I would say to him, "Look, buddy, this sort of requirement has come in, and we've got like an important customer, and so I need you to reschedule work to do this and that." And then I would get back in his Lithuanian accent. I think he was Lithuanian, why? And so I would have to go through it again. And then he would just look at me with a blank expression on his face. "I don't care," he would say in his thick accent. Excuse me, you don't care? Well, what exactly don't you? "I don't care. Those problems are yours, not mine. And I don't have to change what I'm doing or alter my work pattern to suit any sort of requirement. Now, it wasn't a big requirement. He's still handling the same equipment, still doing the same stuff, still with the same tools. He's not going to have to move his chair from his desk from one place to another. Instead of doing this pile of boxes, he needs to do that pile first. That's all it is. So it's hardly a major issue here. And certainly not an inconvenience to him in any way. He just doesn't want it. No, I'm sort of. He had a very bureaucratic view of things. I'm doing this bit of paper. I don't care about another bit of paper. And so, what do you do with somebody like that when they just look at you blankly and say, "I don't care"? Well, you're going to have to care, buddy. So, so I remember trying to impress upon him. So I thought, okay, he just doesn't understand. He comes from another country or something. He just doesn't quite get it. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and I'll explain it slowly and quick. And again, he'd just stare at me with a blank expression as I was going through it. And then I still don't care. Now, I should have probably shown him the door at this point, but again, I wanted to leave that to the guy who was actually directly responsible for it, who I was just filling in for. So I thought, no, I won't do anything radical. He can look after it when he gets back, assuming he wants to. Now, the guy hadn't been there that long, this East European guy, but other things too, that in terms of his work attitude, the idea of staying back was unthinkable to him. I remember sort of grabbing hold of him at 5 o'clock to explain what he needed to do the next day when he came in, because I wasn't going to be there, or was going to be in a meeting or something. And he was in a sort of you could see the agitation, the stress he was going through. He was becoming visibly stressed that he was still in the office at 5:01, and he was trying to sort of shuffle towards the door, and I was kind of following him. Now he also, and the other things too, that there was an upgrade to one of the products that he was responsible for, servicing and technically supporting, and the upgrade was very minor. As in you could cover it with as indeed it was covered with a few bullet points on a memorandum, but that's not how he was used to it. So I asked him, well, why aren't you doing those? He said, well, they've been upgraded. So, they're version 2 instead of version 1 or whatever it was. So, well, I can't do those. What do you mean you can't do it? It's the same product, other than again, 2 or 3 points on a memorandum. No. He says that I have to be specially trained and certified before I can do that. No, you don't. I'm not doing it. He says, you have to train me on it, otherwise I won't do it. And again, he's dictating what he will and won't do. But he's also at the same time reversing the responsibility. I'm not refusing to do it. You just had to give me proper training first, and then give me a certificate and saying that I've had the training. Then and only then will I do it. And so the responsibility is yours. So I said, well, hold on a minute. If you think you can see the boxes piling up there. You've decided not to do them and not tell anybody. So he's come back straight back. Well, you should have known. You should know I'm not certified. You're the manager. You should know I'm not certified. You should know that I don't have to do it. Well, I don't know. Is it in your job description that you can just arbitrarily decide not to do something because you think you should have had some sort of training? Well, you should know. You should know I need training. And again, there's this reversing of the responsibility. So I was trying to convince him that if it was a major upgrade where the technology had changed and it was completely different or primarily different, then sure, I do get his point that he needs to have some sort of training. But where does his responsibility lie? Does he take any personal responsibility? So I said, look, for example, you've only got a few points on a memo, and anyway, the manuals and the technical documents, the service documents have been upgraded. You could easily read those. You don't need a training course to read these very minor adjustments. And when his position was, well, why do I have to do that? That's up to you. You're the management. You have to do. And now, when you look at the communist sort of system where they have this idea that because of their concept of what fairness and equity means, everybody works, everybody consumes. The exceptions, like if you're in childbirth or something like that, but everybody works, everybody consumes. Now, it doesn't really work in the practical reality of things. So they have to create, or artificially create rather, a lot of jobs in order to make sure there's full employment. And so they create these levels of bureaucracy, such as you can't do this till you get a special training course. That training course then employs a lot of people, even though it's not really needed. And then you go through some sort of sham certification process. Then you come back with your certificate, and then you do that. And so these sort of things and you don't take responsibility of something, because if you take responsibility, or if you show any initiative or anything like that, and you take responsibility, if anything goes wrong, you're to blame. Whereas if you just say, well, I'm not doing that till you train me, I'm not going to do that till you tell me, and I'm not going to do this till you say that in writing, or those sorts of things, then you can make sure you avoid all responsibility. And the responsibility is always people further up the food chain, and then in that way you can avoid responsibility. So if something goes wrong, it's never going to be your fault, because you only ever did just what you were told, and you did the minimum amount. So I had other conversations with the guy saying, look, someone's away today, and we've got a surplus of boxes building up here, so you need to, can you move it along a little bit? Why should I do any more? Why should I work harder? Why should I work anymore? Why should I take that responsibility onto me? So why don't you employ someone else? And why is it my problem? And this, so he was constantly like that. But when you look at the communist system of employment in the workplace, he really was just sticking to what he'd been trained to do. And his refusal wasn't a refusal to do the work. It was a refusal to allow himself to be put in a position of responsibility. And that was really what he was trying to do, which again, from the communist system. And he would use and was very, devious and underhanded in how he went about it, I thought. And he would carefully think through, okay, this looks like a situation where I might be responsible, so I have to devise an excuse now to avoid that responsibility. So, because when he would talk, it's almost like he'd rehearsed it, like he'd gone over it in his mind, sort of ad infinitum. So as soon as the question he'd already divined would come, or the directive would come, then he'd instantly have a response to it. And it just seemed so well rehearsed and well drilled. And I don't think he was doing it specifically just because he was there, but rather because that's how he'd started work at I don't know, 20 years old, and he had 15 years or so experience in a communist economy. And but he wasn't interested in trying harder, going the extra yard, taking responsibility. Now, I've come across this in quite a few workers, whether they be East German or whatever from the communist system, Romanian, Polish, the earlier Polish people who've been, someone from people from the Czech Republic. So people who say have entered the workforce within the last 10 years, maybe a bit longer, in those East European countries and communist countries, they tend to have a more industrious attitude, and they're prepared to accept that the commercial enterprise is different from a communist enterprise, and the idea, the need to respond to demands that could possibly change, or unexpected events. The commitment to success, if you like, is different in the West, or was. I think we're losing it very, very quickly. So that was my experience with that guy. But he was in my view, he's representative of the communist workers that I came across, particularly in the 90s. Probably less so today, but certainly then. But if you look at the East European, I'm going to do another video on this, by the way. If you look at the speed with which the East European countries, so they've been free from communism for getting on for 30 years now. And if you look at their economic growth, it was off a low base, and you could say it's impressive. But given it was off such a low base, it wouldn't be hard to improve on that. But if you look at, say, the per capita income of most of those even the better off ones, like the Czech Republic or Poland, that are on relative balance doing okay. Their per capita GDP is still half or less of what it is in Western Europe, and a lot of that GDP is simply through the inflation of property prices, not through productive output or anything like that. Some of it is, but a lot of it's just through asset inflation rather than the economy has actually grown in any sort of productive sense. Similarly, a lot of the brighter people, if they can, from those East European countries, a lot of the criminals too, have all gone to the West to find work. A lot of Polish people in Britain, for example. Now, when you talk to British people about native British people about workers from Eastern Europe, they'll roll their eyes and say how terrible they are. But the only workers that they reckon are worth a pinch of shit are the Polish workers. Interestingly, they're the least bad of the workers that come from Eastern Europe. Now, these East European workers might be cheap, but in terms of are they productive or anything? No, far from it. And that was the case with this guy. I could have replaced him with almost anybody and got more work done. And I wouldn't say a better job necessarily, because the guy was methodical, but could have got more work done and certainly had a better attitude. And sometimes there'd be a lot of work to be. He needed to go somewhere to service something on site. It was just too big to sort of move, so he had to go out on site. And so I asked him to go, and he wasn't. And I just say, hey, I asked you to go, buddy. Why haven't you gone? So his argument was that if he went at that time, which was, say, shortly after lunch, if he went at that time, by the time he finished his work, he wouldn't get home until where he lived. He wouldn't get home until after 5, or he wouldn't be able to leave the site until after the work site until after 5, and so he just wasn't going to go. I'm not going to go. If there's even a risk that I might still be doing work after 5 o'clock, then I just refuse to go. So I got particularly annoyed with that one. Again, you don't decide that, buddy. That's not your decision. Now, if it's that important to you, then however long past 5 o'clock you're still going, if you even do, then come in late tomorrow. Take that time off tomorrow so that you're not shortchanged anyway. And he wasn't happy with that, and gave me a couple of corner of the eye looks of. Because I think he was such a devious guy, he assumed other people were devious. But now I was very much of the view that people, workers like you, or any worker for that matter, have to be well supported with the right training and with the right tools and the right things. And if they don't think they have those tools, they should come to me or come through their direct manager and I was more than I'd jump all over it and address it very quickly, because I think those things are critical. And had to do battle with the CEO frequently on those sort of things. Well, why do they have to have that? No, they do. Okay, just trust me, they do. So I know in discussions or talks to this guy, given how sensitive he was about training and equipment and and this sort of thing, certification and the like. Given how sensitive he was about, I was sort of, okay, you sure? Is there anything you need? And what about, do you need another screwdriver or something? Anything. And he would see that not as an opportunity to actually correct a shortage of things, but he'd see that as an opportunity to open up another avenue of responsibility avoidance, which drove me around the corner, around the twist. Just on a counterpoint of this, I spent, as a young guy as well. I was fortunate enough to be visiting the United States as a young guy when the last generation of can-do Americans were in charge, and the control was slipping already then from their grasp. But what impressed me about America then, and parts of Australia too, but you wouldn't see it so much in Britain. But what impressed me about is the breadth and the extent of this can-do attitude, and going the extra yard, making that extra effort. This determination to succeed and do well and then be rewarded for it, sure, but that sort of thing. And I was enthralled by that as a young guy in particular. I was sort of in a swoon a bit about it, but just how much you would find that. It seemed like everywhere I went, especially around, say, Silicon Valley, parts of Texas and so on. You really saw that, and it really came across that eagerness, that enthusiasm, that as I describe as a can-do attitude. And this was a counterpoint to this communist guy that had the complete reverse view. This idea of can do, he just stared blankly. I remember trying to have conversations with him about, well, don't you want to succeed? Don't you want to think that our customers are happy and this sort of thing? And again, he just gave me that blank stare and said, I don't care. I don't care. Now, if it'd been up to me directly, I would have fired him. But anyway, you've been with Tacitus today. You're a Pushback Channel. Thank you for listening.